Well, Zach, thank you for having me, and just thank you for doing what you do here at Hatch. The entrepreneurial story needs to be told. It's what got this country where it is today, and it's the only thing that's going to turn it back around and get it back on track. So when you posted this, most of the things that happen at Hatch, obviously, it's an egg. It's always about startup. You know, start this, start that. A lot of times it's technology based because that's where all the start stuff's happening. And but I keep hanging out with this group because it's like the energy's here. Right after you've been in business for 10 years, you get in the rut. So you got to come to places like this and work with guys like you to learn to get that fire in your chest and start new businesses and going. So somebody's got to teach these birds how to walk and then fly and all of that. So when he said, we need entrepreneurs to come and tell their horror stories and how you made it out, I was like, well, hell, I've got a lot of horror stories, and luckily we lived to tell about it. And I did want to I like going later in the presentation because I can kind of tailor my stuff to weave around what all the other entrepreneurs today have said, which I totally agree with so many of them. And that also led me to understand something, that you guys come here hopefully to learn from our mistakes and learn how to wiggle your way out of it. Hopefully you learn how not to make the same mistake, right? Because I think one of the quotes I love, and I think it's anonymous, but smart people learn from their mistakes. Wise people learn from the mistakes of others. Okay, so I think we're all here to kind of learn from each other's mistakes so we don't do it again. And then the third thing that I think is sometimes even more valuable is maybe you and your own company, and what we say you already know. There's value in that. You're on the right track. You've done that. You've made that decision. You made it correctly. And so there's three things that I think we all need to come no matter what stage your business is in. So let me start off with just letting you know what I do. It's funny, I know Daniel, and so somebody asked the question, like, what do you do? So I was like, okay, I got to do my little intro, and I'll tell you what I do. So I'm in the human services field. We work with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So here in Norfolk, you guys probably have heard of Hope House. So we do a lot the same type of thing as Hope House does. They have an awesome marketing campaign. Hope House is a wonderful company. Lynn Siegel was friends with my mom. And so when my mom started her company back in 1994, she had a very similar belief that Lynn had, which was people with disabilities do not need to be institutionalized. They're not cattle. They don't need to be warehoused. They don't need to be treated like a commodity. They're individuals that deserve a good life in the community. They deserve rights just like me and you. And so my mom spent her whole career fighting for those rights. And, back in the 70s, the hippie days, when everybody wasn't smoking weed and having sex, there was two things that really happened, and minorities got their rights and they could vote, and that's awesome. And women started to get their rights, and they could do things, and this glass ceiling started to be shattered. That was awesome. And as she was in that hippie mind state of like, we got to fight, but what are we going to fight for? She early on in her career learned that people with disabilities were not being protected, and to this day, we still have institutions in Virginia. So that gives you some background on the company that at this point I own with Andy, my partners here in the crowd, my yin to the yang here. So I'm going to tailor this a little different than what the other guys did. When Zach sent me this, I was thinking, what's that emotion of being through the worst of the worst, and how did that make you feel? And so I'm going to, before I tell you how I got into this, let me tell you the emotion that kind of happened. So I'm down in I worked at McDonald's. I was kind of high up. My uncle owned a bunch of them, and I was kind of his right-hand man, and I was going to the board and all this cool stuff, and I had this great career set out, and I was just loving life, thought I was big stuff in the small town I was in. And then my mom sends me a letter, and to paraphrase it, it was like, basically, cancer's back. This time I'm probably not going to make it. I've got this company. You're my oldest kid. You're the only one with any business sense. The others were a little younger than me. And basically, you have two choices. You can come up here and learn it from me, and I'll do my best to teach it to you. Or you can stay doing what you're doing. But either way, in some period of time, it's going to be yours. Who wants that call? And what do you do? I mean, you live in Georgia. Your mom from Virginia is calling you. I mean, other than milk and cookies during Christmas, I'm not really like friends or whatever. And so I kind of thought, you do all the things you do, and then you think, shucks, I don't want to, but I'm going to do the right thing. So I move up here and take a massive pay cut and lose tons of money and work for very little to learn a field I really didn't want to know anything about. I did work for her way back in college, so I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. But I was doing fun stuff down in Georgia. I was really enjoying my career. So I get up here and she says, you know, okay, this is what we do, and here's the company. And I'm thinking this little company my mom had. Nope. She's like up to 185 employees, and we have a fleet of vehicles, and it's pretty big. And I'm like, holy crap, Mom, what the hell are you doing? You know, this is crazy. I thought you had this little company. No, this is a big company, you know. And so I was like, okay, so, you know, give me an idea how the business is doing, blah, blah, blah. And of course, she's like, oh, we make at the time is 3.5 million gross revenue. And we spend like $3.6 million gross revenue. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me you're dying. I mean, I'm doing this quickly because I have 30 minutes to talk about these horror stories. But basically, I'm dying. The company's going downhill, and I'd like you to grab the wheel because I'm probably not going to be here when we actually sink. That's how I'm hearing this, right? So I go back to Georgia, and I'm thinking, this is a really bad idea. But I did it anyway. And I stopped everything. I moved up here. I grabbed the wheel with the full intention of going down with the ship. And I knew I could go back work for my uncle down in Georgia if I had to. But and amazingly, somehow we kind of made it. You know, we got through that period and we're up and running. I learned it from her. She passes away, and that sucked. And as all you can imagine, your mom dying, especially your mom and your boss and the founder of the company. And now I'm at the time 32, and I have 185 employees. And Andy became an owner at that time as well. And now it's our responsibility. So there's a little emotion there on what would that be like. And then comes I guess probably the worst thing that I had to hear one time is the CFO calls me into the office. Now, the CFO is my stepdad because he was married to my mom. He's running the books. And so here's my stepdad that raised me, and I caused him just a miserable life while I lived with him. And so, you know, generally he's like, oh, God, Kay, you brought this kid up here to run this company. He's going to totally ruin it. And here I did. I almost did. He comes in, he says 7 words that you never, ever, ever want to hear when you're in business. It has nothing to do with your product, your service, or blah, blah, blah. It's, we are not going to make payroll. That's the death nail. That if you don't make your payroll, your people don't come to work, you grind to a halt, you die. Happens all the time. And not only that, we're not 10 people, we're not 50 people, we're not 100, we're not 150. 185 people are going to go to the bank and their checks are going to bounce because we screwed up. Think about that just for a second. 185 people are going to not pay their rent, not make their car payment because you screwed up. That's big. I mean, I'm going to cry. You know. Daniel made it okay, though. So how did we get to that point? How the hell did I end up myself right there with 185 people about to not get a check, right? So rewind, 2007, things are going okay. Been 2 years since I've been president. Things are kind of cooking. Housing market's going through the roof, right? 22% a month. You guys remember that, right? Rents were here, and now they're here, and now they're here. Everybody wants to buy in, get quick money, fast, 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 buy, sell, sell, sell. Everybody's going to make $1 million. And as Americans do, you know, there's a bubble and pop, and then we all, you know. But 2007, I'm looking at this. We are going to get pushed out of Virginia Beach. We work with people with disabilities. They need housing. Housing's going through the roof. I can't serve them if they don't have a place to live, right? And I don't want to have to move to Emporia where you can afford a house. You know, our people want to live in Virginia Beach next to their family or their friends, whatever. And so so we searched and searched and searched and searched and finally found, and I don't want to throw any banks under the bus, but we found a entity that would lend us money at very little money down to buy houses. Very good interest rate, 30-year fixed rate, 4.75%. I'm 30 at that, what did I say, 34 is what 34 years old, right? No credit check. And an entity is going to allow me to buy 4 houses, 2 at a time, within 6 months. Awesome, right? Woohoo! Solved the problem. I am brilliant. I'm Donald Trump. This is great. This business thing is easy, right? Well, you know, and it's really cool. And you get into the deal and the emotion of the deal, and you're like, this is awesome. You know, they're giving me the money. That must mean I'm on the right track and all of that. And so we're chugging along. And then you realize, well, I got these other 4 houses that are operating, and I just bought these 4 houses. And now I got to move all this crap to this house and this crap to that house and this guy here and this guy here. And then 6 months later, the 7 words pop up, right? We're not going to pay payroll. Lowe's took all of our money. Our labor of that, the administrative bandwidth that tied up, took the money. It's gone. We're done. Now, unfortunately, my stepdad's an engineer, not a financial person, right? So engineers are quick and simple, and our financial accounting software was kind of like there's money or there's not. And he had kind of waited. I don't know why, but he kind of waited till the last minute. to let me know that we're basically on Friday we're screwed, and we just need to go have woohoo, like go on eBay and move back to Georgia. So so we're at Andy and I and Paul, my stepdad, we're at a table at a diner, and we're kind of thinking through this, like, holy crap, we got to make this, we got to make payroll, we got to figure out how to do it. He's literally, let's call it, let's just let the bank come get it. We tried our best, company's already going out of business. I can't believe we made it this long, but give up. It's done. We're done. I just wouldn't do it. I'm sorry. I'm just not a quitter. And not that he was, but he's getting older and wants to retire. And he's kind of like, I want the stupid company guy. I want to enjoy my life. Andy and I are like, hell no. We got 185 employees. We got amazing people with disabilities. They're going to be extremely disruptive. These people, sometimes they're not verbal. Sometimes they have autism. They love the people they're with. They love the staff that are with them. So we screw up. It's not just I quit selling a widget to the general public on the internet. These are human beings that are going to get shuffled around in a system that's inefficient. And so we pretty much said, let's do it. Let's liquidate every asset we have. I somehow talked my stepdad into dumping a ton of money in, and he got penalties and his CDs and stuff. I mean, pretty much he dumped in his inheritance. I mean, I don't know why. He's crazy. But he trusted that Andy and I could pull this off. And amazingly, we did. I mean, amazingly. Like it's like the airplane going to hit bottom. We got the gear down, bumped, and then popped back up. But we did it. We had to actually, believe it or not, we had the company turned around in a year. We were out of our line of credit altogether within a year because we finally, and Daniel mentioned it, once you have fear, all of a sudden action takes effect, right? What do you call it? I'm okay with where I am. Everything's peachy. We're making money. All's good. No. The minute you get the fear, especially when you got 185 people counting on you and you just drop the ball. For me, that all of a sudden you have clarity. The plane's going down. Let's try to fix this. So so kind of look back at that. We thought, okay, what do we learn from this? We made it, got the place turned around. We realized that banking's important because we actually had a local bank. And again, I don't want to trash any banks. We had one bank that wouldn't help us out and another bank that would. And the only reason why they would, because they shouldn't have, right? We're talking 2007, the whole market's about to crash, and a lot of banks knew it. They didn't go, ooh, wow, all of a sudden, housing is great now. It's not. Bullcrap. Some of them knew. And so one of the banks we were with was one of the ones that were not doing very good things. And so they were like, we're not giving this guy any more credit. I had a local banker that moved over, and he believed in this. He came by, one of the only bankers that stopped by and actually visited and toured the sites, met the people. And he still to this day jokes on me because I'm an Excel guy. I like charts and data and stuff. He's put me in a dark room with Excel, and I love it. And so I spread out these sheets of like, here's my business model. And I actually had them taped together because it was too small if I put it on one. So I have these sheets, and I roll it out. And this guy's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, you have no idea what you're doing, but it seems like it makes sense. This is pretty cool. And so he had also just moved to this new bank, and he needed something to come through. And so he was like, man, I took a huge chance that he probably may have lost his career if I would have failed. He truly just believed it. And so it was one of them, I don't believe in all the divine intervention junk, but man, I'm glad that guy came in there. And so some of the other entrepreneurs were up here, talked about your group, your team, getting outside set of eyes, like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. Who do I call? So building that network, because the only reason I met that banker is because another guy that I'd worked with said, hey, I know you're in trouble. I got this guy. Let me at least get you in front of him. You pitch him, might work out. I'm still here because of it, and 185 people have jobs. All right, so let's go to 5 words you never want to hear. We're probably not going to make payroll. But at this point, we're over 200 employees. I don't even know if that's 5. Probably not going to make payroll. It's not, we're not. The first one was we're not. Like, it was seriously Friday, if we don't dump in a ton of money, it's all going to bounce, right? So now we're down to we're probably not going to make payroll. Part of what I learned about being an entrepreneur is we love the deal. We love the emotion of the deal. I'm going to go buy this company. Like most of the entrepreneurs here talked about getting into all this crazy stuff, right? Bright, shiny object, really cool. Let's go do it. It's going to be fun. We're going to be great. We're going to save the planet. Oh, crap. Implementation, right? Hatch is easy. Execute is the hard part, right? And so so I get this call. I think it was 2010. I got a company out in Danville, Virginia, friends with my mom, all this stuff. They talked in 1996 and all this history and all of that. But guess what? They're not going to make payroll. And they, so they were already playing all the games that we had played. But by the time they called me, they basically wanted us to come in and buy them, save the day, all that kind of stuff. And right at this point, we're $7 million gross revenue. Like, don't think profit, because I'm not mentioning profit because there's barely none there. But we're pretty big, and they had $1.2 million in, I think, 75 employees. Which, if you do the math, that's probably why they're going out of business, because they needed about 55 employees. They're not going to make payroll. And they want me to buy under very short notice. And I do what all the entrepreneurs do that are pretty cocky and we think we can figure everything out. We think, I'm going to go to Barnes & Noble, buy a book, A to Z, or mergers and acquisitions, A to Z. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I didn't know anybody done a merger and acquisition. I mean, I literally went in. This is a different CFO at this time. And I went in there. Wouldn't it be cool to have an acquisition under our belt? I mean, I'm thinking of this as like pride. Like, it makes awesome acquisition. This is going to be cool. So I read the book, use it for reference, did some calculations and all of that. Still in the emotional of like, this is cool. We're going to do this deal, right? We're going to save these people. I'm going to make sure that they don't have a lost paycheck, because I have been there. I have done that. And I never want to have somebody not have a paycheck because on my watch. Now, these people are in Danville. I hadn't met half of them. I met the owners, right? And they say, oh, these people are not going to have a paycheck. You got to do something. I cared about their employees more than they did. Throughout the whole acquisition, they're all about this and this and this. I'm like, what about your employees? Let's fix that problem, right? So we're coming up on closing. They're going to crash and burn before closing. So now we're like, okay, what assets do you have? Okay, give me your vehicle titles, and I'm going to make your payroll, and da-da-da. All this stuff you really should not do before closing, right? But the people are going to lose their money and all that, and we're in human services, right? If you're not helping people, it's not about the money, it's about the people. We're about the people, so we're going through hardship to do this. So we get through the acquisition, right? Back to Donald Trump, man. I just did my first acquisition. This is cool. Got the houses, bought a company. We're getting big, man. This is cool. And then the other words come in. We're probably not going to make payroll. And I made the same damn mistake I made with the houses. The deal is not what's important. It's the execution of what happens after the deal. You get married, that's great. Honeymoon, great. Go try to buy a house. I mean, deal with financial hardship in marriage, right? They don't teach you that. And so we get all excited about this deal, and we realize to bring in 75 employees into a company that's 4 hours away. Think about that. It's Medicaid billing, it's HR, it's infrastructure, it's vehicle titles, it's the culture, it's the training. I mean, we're talking this massive, crazy problem, and there's absolutely no way to predict what that's going to cost you. Well, we kind of found out it was a ton of money. And at this time, we've pretty much gone way deep into our line of credit. And Virginia's government's great. Basically, at the end of the fiscal year, they decide not to pay everybody on the last week, and then they double pay you next week, right? Because they need to make sure they make their numbers. And they say, oh, but I owe you all this money. And they say, sending out all this money. So we know we're going to get paid, but basically they said, okay, we're not going to pay you this week. And we kind of knew it was coming, but I didn't know how low we were in the line of credit. And I realized, holy crap, here we got all these employees. They're not going to pay us. We still have to make payroll, and we're probably not going to make it. Now, that means we're coming real close to the ground. And I don't know about you guys. I don't like to take that much risk when it comes down to people and their jobs and their paycheck. So luckily, the bank came back in and gave us a little extra line of credit for 30 days because they believed in us. They probably shouldn't have. And we skimmed bottom and did the same thing over again. And at that point, you realize, like, hey, this is the second time we've done something really stupid and almost cost us the whole company. Both things were the right thing to do, right? We needed the houses, or we would have been priced out of Virginia Beach. I think we should have bought Danville because those people really would have lost their jobs. It was the right thing to do. It was execution. We didn't know what we're doing. I read the book. Like all books, they're generalized, made for just general things, and it doesn't really apply to you. I didn't have a close network of people that I could go to, a second set of eyes that have come in, have done a merger and acquisition before, that knew how to do integration between two companies with a lot of employees. And so that's where we kind of screwed that up. And a lot of guys that come to Hatch are all techies, right? So entrepreneurs are a lot like your little Captain Kirk, like, oh, let's go do this. It's great. Woohoo. And then you have Spock going, no, it's probably a bad idea. Logic and reason. It's this cool thing over here. At the end of the day, that's reality. And Captain Kirk is in this weird stuff. Save humanity. And so entrepreneurs need to flip-flop between the two, right? Sometimes you got to get your Spock on before you do something Kirky, okay? And so that leads me to now. Let's get in more of the here's how to get yourself not in the situation that Andy and I have gotten ourselves into. First off, all that financial mumbo jumbo that whatever person's putting into QuickBooks, actually some of it's important. And I mean that's blasphemy, right? You're like, bright shiny, somebody write me a check, I'm going to go do this, right? No. So at some point, you got to look at the books and you got to start understanding the difference between cash and accrual. You got to understand what is your balance sheet versus your P&L, right? Because you cannot make profit, your balance sheet's going up, meaning you have wealth, and you could be making profit and your balance sheet's going down. I mean, it's kind of neat how that works. And if you don't know what the bank is looking at when they ask you for your financials, then you're going to do the same dumb stuff I've done. And the bank just calls and says, oh, it's time to renew your line of credit. Send me your financials. And I'm like, which ones you want? So I don't know what the hell a financial is. And, balance sheet, all this stuff. And I just send it. No, can somebody hit print on the balance sheet or whatever the thing is for what period of time? Oh, yeah, 2013. Cool. You send it. Idiot. You want to run a company in the ground, don't understand your financials. And I feel like I've just touched the top of the iceberg. I haven't even gotten deep on it. So I realized, if you're really going to run a company, again, we're outside of this Hatch stuff. Now you're into employees and lives that you're changing. You got to understand your financials, regardless if you want to or not. The other thing is, do not make the mistake that the person running your financials has the same motivations that you do, okay? Sometimes it's just nice to go to work and chop some numbers up and leave because they're not the ones that have to be responsible when the payroll doesn't get made, right? So I basically made the decision, I'm taking over not the day-to-day financial stuff, but the CFO component. I'm going to track it. I'm going to make sure that never, ever, ever, ever happens to me again because I've almost royally screwed it up twice, and I don't want to do that again. So the financial component and understanding how the bank views your company, what ratios are they looking at, and then track those ratios over time. Because the QuickBooks puts out a snapshot. Here's how you're doing today, right? That doesn't matter. Is your airplane going down or up or flat? So time is the variable that the bank, they probably are looking at, but they're not telling you how you're doing. But they ask you questions. And if you don't know how you're doing, then the bank's not going to lend you money, and then you might not make your payroll, and that really, really sucks. So let's get into ratios. That's my last one. I don't hope I'm doing good on time.
8 minutes.
8 minutes, thank you. So let's get into ratios. This is not something you can go get a book and read and figure out. Nobody knows the ratios of your company. When I say ratio, you can say, oh, let me track my labor, right? Payroll's this, and now it's that, now it's that. Who cares? Is your income going up relative to your payroll? Right? Payroll going up, well, I bought Danville. It's supposed to go up. I got a bunch of employees. But the payroll's going up quicker than the income. Oops, right? So you got to be tracking the ratio. How does this relate to that? Now, income versus payroll is a really easy one, right? Anybody's worked in restaurants, managed labor. What happens when it's something very odd? We're talking about the taxi service or financial services or the social media and selling marketing and stuff. I mean, these are each things that they're unique ratios that are key success indicators that you should be tracking. And there's almost no one data point that's really important. It's always how does that data point relate to the other data points. Now, again, I told you I'm an Excel junkie, and if what you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I basically use Excel, and I do a lot of charting, and I think, like, what are the ratios I should be tracking? And you can go through the analysis or the paralysis and analysis or whatever. But I'm really, at this point, 10 years into the career, the company's at 10 million, and we have, like Jack said, we fluctuate anywhere between 185 and 300 people. I mean, 285 and 300 people. I'm realizing more and more what my job needs to be is on the financial side, understanding how to run a company, not the services. See, when you're hatching something, you're probably thinking, I'm really good at this widget, app, whatever, and I'm going to be that guy. And then you grow to a certain size where you need to hire people to do the widget thing, and somebody's got to run the company. And I kid around and I say, my job is to keep the stadium open so other people can play the game. Right? So that's where Andy comes in. I realize I'm kind of bad at the game. I really like the Excel back office stuff. And so luckily, Andy's there to make sure that the game's being played well and persons with disabilities are getting the highest quality support possible. I'm on the side making sure the stadium stays open and that the paychecks don't bounce. Now, of course, we know enough about each other's side, but and some of the other entrepreneurs mentioned it. You got to figure out what you're good at and do that. and figure out what you stink at and find somebody else that can complement that. So some people think, wow, I stink at that. I need to be trained more, so I will stink less at that, right? But you're taking away your distraction of what you're good at. So why not just find people that complement you and build a team around so that then you can go forward with everybody. We used to call it in McDonald's aces in their places. So those are, I tried to stay away from stuff other people had talked about and get into the stuff that was a little bit different in the emotion behind that. I think the key to it is keep doing things like this, because the people you meet in this room might change your life. It might be the one person that had the answer to the problem that you had. That's why I keep coming, regardless of how big I am or whatever. I learn from every single person I talk to. Join groups that have, like business groups, other groups. I'm in 2 different groups. EO is one of them. Daniel was also an EO member. That is amazing. He did it 10 years ago. If I would have done it 10 years ago, I wouldn't have made half the stupid mistakes I've made. So the minute you can get into EO or the 3 to 5 Club or any other business group that puts you in contact with other entrepreneurs that you can bounce ideas off of, you'll learn from their mistakes and you'll make it. What I did wrong is I stayed in my little world and I want to fix the little company and I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't asking for help. And so I think that's one of the main things that has gotten us where we are today.
It just so happens that Hatch has a business group just like that too.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, sign everybody up. Since then, also talking about startups, we had a PC repair company that was going to go out of business. Now this is a very small company. So I am in the tech field now, believe it or not. We do remote tech support and break fix and all that good stuff. And the only reason I bought it is I like the guy behind the counter. I went in one day and he said, I'm gonna lose my job. The owner isn't paying the bills. They're gonna lock the door and they're gonna take all the stuff and I'm unemployed. And I believed in the guy. So we worked a deal, we bought it. We lost some money on it, but it's turning around. So, I mean, I did it because of the guy's job. I didn't do it because I wanted a tech company or wanted to break fix. I would go in and look, and this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. But he's doing our tech support and it's awesome. And it's a really good partnership. We also just started 2 more companies. We took our maintenance department. We're going to turn it into a handyman service, primarily looking at how do we support other companies like mine that do not have a maintenance department that have people with disabilities that they need to support. Putting in a handicapped rail, widening doorways, things like that. It's nice when your handyman team knows autism, right? There's a niche for that. So we found a niche. There's a billion handyman companies, but how many of them know autism and know 10 people with it that they've known for 10 years, right? There's a niche. The other one we're doing, it's a company called Valuable. So it's specifically designed to help people. It's like a staffing company for people with disabilities, because employers don't want to hire people with disabilities because they don't know disability, right? They're scared. Most employers don't want to hire employees right now because they're just expensive and they get workers' comp and all this other stuff. We're going to hire people with disabilities and try to find them jobs, but we're hiring them and just doing the contract stuff. But that way the people with disabilities can bounce in and out of companies fluidly like a normal staffing company. We just pitched it this morning for the first time and it was like, boom, they loved it. It's like it's never been done. So, so no matter how big you are and how many employees you have, stay fresh and keep innovating and keep starting companies, because somebody's got to change this country. So, well, thank you guys for having me. Any questions? I guess I should sit that down.
Questions? When obviously you have worked a lot of employees,
yes.
When looking for employees, what do you think is better? Like, you would have a person that is motivated and excited, or do you think it's better working with like a skilled person?
Right. Good. Very, very good question. And I'm going to tell you where I stole what I'm about to tell you. A guy named Chuck Blakeman, who just spoke at the EO Expo, came. He wrote a book called Why Employees Are Always a Bad Idea. And in that book, he basically said, what you want is not an employee that just clocks in, clocks out. They're just there for the job. They don't care about your mission and your values. He brings it over to really getting a company down to its core values. Why you're there, what's your mission really? Not just the BS crap you have on the wall, but the really, why do you wake up? Why are you excited about what you're doing? Now, in our field, it's pretty easy because there's people with disability. That's awesome. Making a widget would be a little harder. Like, I love my pencil sharpener. But think about Zappos. They did it, right? Zappos, they're on the phone selling shoes. But those people, that company is one of the most innovative cultures in the world. People can't wait to go to Zappos. How'd they do it? So what Blakeman says is, look at your company culture first, and that's, you screen for culture. So they put an ad in Craigslist and say, here's all about our company culture, blah, 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 blah. If you are interested in this, click here, right? Don't send your resume because I don't want to know all that stuff. Just click here. Next step is your talents. What are the things you're wired for? So I like analytics. So if I say I'm wired for analytics and what they want is some artsy fartsy thing to draw, I can't do that. So they would have screened me out at talents, So it doesn't even matter what's on my resume. They would have screened me out. And then after you get through the talents, then you go into skills. Now it gets into your formal training, your experience, the stuff you see on your resume, which Chuck Blakeman calls your obituary. It's all the good stuff you ever did, never the bad stuff, right? And then after that, you go through the normal interview process. So my recommendation is stolen from Chuck Blakeman, which is go for culture first, then talent. And if they've passed those two, then move on with the normal HR ringer and hire the person. So good question. No, we didn't learn that until a year ago. So
that talk was great by Chuck.
By Chuck, yeah. Chuck Blakeman's amazing. He's got a lot of books. I mean, he's not giving me a commission, but if you're interested in how to run a business, a good business that's mission-based and culture-based, that guy's an awesome resource. So, any other questions? So, well, thank you for. Oh, yes, sir.
Eric, a quick question. With starting so many different businesses, I heard that you have the central theme of persons with disabilities.
Yes.
But at what point do you realize that maybe your idea just doesn't fit in with that? Have you gotten in that situation before and had to maybe not do a deal?
Well,
you still do it.
Yes, and we're not actively out looking for deals. So that most of the time, this has been somebody that has called for help because I knew them. Most of the time, it's people calling me saying, "You want to sell your company?" And I'm like, "No, I kind of like doing what I'm doing. And plus, you give me some money, I'm just going to start another company. So why not just run the one I already have that I like?" But we are sticking with the common theme of persons with disabilities. But the cool thing is, this is the most amazing untapped workforce in America. These are people who are proud to show up, proud to have a job, proud to make minimum wage. They don't drink the Kool-Aid with everybody else. They're not the gossipy type. They come in and they work hard and they love being there. And so I think one of our focuses over the near future is going to be, how do we find a way to get these folks working? Because they're a much better workforce than the typical person who's always complaining and they want more money or they're going to quit. And so we realized, okay, so we're pretty good at building stadiums now. So we just need to find games. And so why couldn't we go buy a florist? A up and running florist, mom and pop shop, they want to retire. We get the stadium, we start doing that stuff. And then we use people with disabilities to provide a lot of the labor because it can be done. Right now, we just partnered with a company called Omnio. It's a goat milk soap goat milk product manufacturer. Half the stuff they're doing there can be done with people with disabilities. And they're proud and they love it. And so that's what we pitched this morning. We're showing, one of the ladies came in and they're able to get the soap and they rub it out. They put it in the little package. They seal it. They're putting the labels on the lip balms. They love their job. And the people at Omnio love them. And it's amazing. So I'm not saying I want to go buy a goat milk soap manufacturer, but I could keep going into different directions and diversifying. I guess kind of what you're getting at is diversifying into other entrepreneurial opportunities, but having the common theme of persons with disabilities, that's a huge advantage. I mean, not to mention, it just feels good. I mean, they're great workers and it's great on the business side, but just knowing that you got some guy in a wheelchair and now he's happy, he's living a fulfilled life. I mean, that's why we're here, right? I mean, the money's, if you're out for the money and wasting your time, I don't, in my opinion. But good question. Support Services of Virginia is the main company. I didn't say that, did I? Thanks for the plug there. Yeah, so
you learned that from Daniel.
So I did learn that from Daniel. I told you what I did, but I didn't tell you the name. So yeah, Support Services of Virginia. And like Daniel said, my mom had the same thing. She didn't want it to be K. Dodd and Associates because when she passes, the company dies. And so I think she knew off the cuff. She wanted not to be the person, right? She wanted the company to live on beyond her. Now, I put in 3 or 4 years working for the Boy Scouts as a district executive, but the Boy Scout rules are really apply to business. And one of them was basically when you come to a campsite, leave it better than you found it. And so that's the way I look at my tenure in this company is, as long as it's better than when I found it, then I've done my job. But at some point I need to exit and it needs to go on past me. And so that's the way I've always treated it. So I like the name because it's pretty much we can do whatever we want as long as we're in Virginia. So if I want to get out of state, we got to figure something out. But good questions. Okay. Well, thank you guys.